She had the clipboard, designer stilettos, and 6 years of running the HOA like her personal kingdom. What she didn't have was a single legal claim to any of it. That Tuesday morning, Linda Hawthorne stood at the edge of my driveway, flapping a violation notice like it was a royal proclamation. $500 a month for parking my own trucks on my own land. The sheer nerve was astonishing. These HOA overlords acted like they controlled every square inch of my life, while threatening to foreclose on my home over too many vehicles. Her husband's gigantic RV sat in their yard like a shrine to double standards. She truly believed she could take my property while ignoring the very rules she shoved down everyone else's throats. But what Linda didn't realize was that something buried deep in public records was about to bring her entire empire crashing down, something that would shift the balance of power so fast, she'd go from local queenpin to criminal defendant quicker than summer concrete hardens. Ever wish you could utterly ruin someone who thought they had authority over you? Because that's exactly what happened, and the payback was so legendary, folks in Riverside County still talk about it. Here's how the whole fiasco began. My name's Mike Torres. I'm 50 and own Torres Concrete Solutions right here in Riverside, California. I'm a third-generation contractor. My grandfather started with nothing but grit and a wheelbarrow. My father turned it into a thriving business, and I grew it into a $2.3 million operation employing 15 local workers. 6 months earlier, I went through a divorce that felt like someone performing open-heart surgery on my finances with a butter knife. No scandal, just two people who outgrew each other. I needed a clean slate. My ex's attorney couldn't find a single extra dime to squeeze out of me, so I bought a pristine 3-bedroom ranch in Maple Ridge for $485,000, all cash. It was a dream neighborhood, the kind of place where every Saturday morning smelled like jasmine, coffee, and fresh mulch. I dropped another $30,000 on landscaping because I believe in doing things right. My 3 work trucks, a flatbed, crew pickup, and concrete mixer rested in a tidy semicircle in my driveway. That's when I met Linda Hawthorne. Imagine stepping on a landmine wrapped in a welcome mat. A 58-year-old retired bank manager who'd been HOA president for 6 straight years uncontested. She lived in the fanciest house in the subdivision, a massive colonial probably worth $800,000. Looked like something straight out of a mortgage commercial. This woman literally measured grass height with a ruler and strutted around in designer heels, clipboard in hand, tapping like a countdown to someone's doom, always at exactly 8:15 a.m. The first time she introduced herself, I should have called a moving company. Welcome to Maple Ridge, Mr. Torres. I trust you're aware of our community standards. Not nice to meet you, not glad to have you here. She sounded more like border control than a neighbor. Things were fine at first. I kept the property looking like a magazine cover. I even helped Mrs. Morgan next door carry groceries and patch her cracked sidewalk for free. My trucks were parked legally just like everyone else's: boats, RVs, and flashy sedans. Then came that fateful October morning. Doorbell rings at 7:30 a.m. It's the mailman with a certified letter that felt like a lawsuit in an envelope. Cheap paper, but the message screamed with expensive threats. Red bold letters: commercial vehicles violate community standards, devalues property, immediate action required. Linda was demanding $500 a month or the complete removal of my work trucks. $500 for parking licensed vehicles on my own land, which I own outright. That night, I combed through the HOA's governing documents twice. Not a single mention of commercial vehicle restrictions. And here's the kicker. Every Wednesday, Linda's landscaping crew parked a trailer full of diesel mowers, fuel tanks, and fertilizer in front of her house for hours. The smell of burning fuel choked the air like hypocrisy on fire. I knocked on her door that evening, hoping to resolve it like grown adults. She answered like she was defending a fortress. Mrs. Hawthorne, I reviewed the HOA bylaws. There's nothing in them about commercial trucks. The board can implement new rules as needed to preserve the community, she replied, stiff as ever. Your vehicles aren't appropriate here, but your landscapers bring industrial equipment every week. Her smile could have flash frozen lava. That's different. That's for upkeep, not storage. In that moment, it clicked. This wasn't about trucks. It was about control, maybe even deciding who was worthy of living in her pristine little bubble. I had 2 options: roll over or fight. She didn't realize she'd just picked a fight with someone who was about to own the whole battlefield, and she was about to hand me the ammo herself. 3 days later, another certified letter. This time, emergency HOA meeting, scheduled with 24 hours notice for compliance issues. I showed up to find 3 people in Linda's living room, her, a neighbor named Margaret Finch, and some guy named Bob who owned a rental nearby. 3 out of 7 board members. The room smelled like candles and desperation. "Thanks for coming, Mr. Torres," Linda said, dropping into her chair like she was about to deliver a sentence. "We need to address the vehicle matter." I hit record on my phone. "This meeting violates the bylaw requiring 7 days notice." She gave a smug grin. "Emergency situations allow faster action." "What's the emergency?" "My trucks have been there for months." Bob tried to smooth things over. "Look, Mike, it's just about keeping property values up. Maybe we can work out a solution." Linda didn't flinch. "The board has passed a new vehicle ordinance. You have until Monday to comply or face a $100 daily fine." I leaned back. "You voted?" "When?" Margaret muttered, eyes down. "Before you arrived. A secret vote during an illegal meeting to push through a rule that didn't exist 10 minutes ago. They clearly missed HOL 101. Thanks to my divorce, I'd learned bylaws are binding contracts and enforcing them selectively is a massive legal mistake. That weekend, I went full detective, found out Linda's son, Danny, ran Hawthorne Landscaping and parked his equipment overnight in the neighborhood. Not during service overnight storage. Her husband Frank's RV and boat trailer. Permanent fixtures in their yard. Tuesday night's official board meeting rolled around, and I showed up armed with a manila folder that could stop a bullet. I brought witnesses to Mrs. Morgan and our neighbor Jake. This was going to be a show. "Before we talk about my trucks," I began, opening the folder, "let's take a look at how evenly these rules are enforced." I laid out photo after photo: Danny's trailer, Frank's RV, 3 other neighbors with work vehicles and boats that somehow never got flagged. You could hear a pin drop. Bob stared at the floor. Margaret's pin clicking echoed like a warning. "This is targeted enforcement," I said. "You're using HOA rules to go after me while ignoring your own family and friends." Linda's face turned crimson. "Those are different cases." "How?" I asked. "Frank's RV is grandfathered under older guidelines." "Show me where that's written." Silence. "And your son's landscaping trailer, that's temporary. Staging. So are my trucks. Your vehicles are industrial. His 500-gallon pesticide tank isn't." Jake raised a hand like it was homeroom. "When were these grandfather clauses established?" Bob squirmed. "We haven't officially documented those yet." "Exactly," I said. "You're making it up on the spot." Linda jumped out of her chair. "This meeting is about your violations, not the board's conduct." I held up my phone. "Actually, it's about both. I'm recording all of this for my attorney. Every excuse you've made tonight, that's evidence now." Silence. Tension thick as concrete. Either apply the rules equally or admit they're bogus. "But I'm not paying a dime for rules everyone else breaks daily." Linda finally cracked. Her voice rose. "Mr. Torres, if you keep disrupting this board, we'll be forced to escalate." Bingo. What she didn't realize was that I'd already started digging, and what I found was going to flip her whole world upside down. Her stronger action showed up Wednesday in a white city van. Out stepped Linda and some guy in a hard hat, clearly her old pal from the planning department. "Anonymous complaint," she said, beaming. "Noise. Safety concerns." The inspector looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Probably because arriving with the complainer destroys objectivity. He spent 20 minutes walking my property, taking pictures like he was at a crime scene, while Linda pointed and whispered like a bad actor feeding lines. When he was done, he smiled and shook my hand. "Excellent setup, Mr. Torres. Everything checks out. No violations here." Linda's face cycled through every shade of fury, but she wasn't finished. 2 days later, another certified letter, this time from the Contractor Licensing Board. Some anonymous tipster had reported me for running an illegal operation, storing hazardous waste, and breaking zoning laws. The complaint was detailed and pure fiction, and I'd bet anything that it reeked of vanilla-scented paper and manicured fingerprints. That's when I dug even deeper. My accountant friend Bobby taught me how to find buried financial info. What I uncovered, Linda had declared bankruptcy 3 years back, remortgaged her house twice in under 2 years. Her credit report looked like a disaster. Even more disturbing, every homeowner she ever cited ended up selling their property within 6 months, always below market value. This wasn't about enforcement. It was about economic cleansing, driving out working families to make room for richer buyers. And that was illegal on multiple fronts. I hired Patricia Valdez, a lawyer known for turning HOA bullies into court defendants. After reviewing everything, she filed official complaints for selective enforcement, demanded a full audit of HOA finances, and requested a legal review of Linda's leadership. Linda's response, pure desperation. She proposed a $5,000 per household special assessment for beautification projects. And that, my friend, was her last mistake. While she gave her speech at the community center, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like irritated hornets. She kept repeating that this initiative would uphold neighborhood standards and attract the right kind of residents. Her backers, mostly retirees and the owners of oversized homes, nodded in robotic agreement, like dashboard figurines, while working-class families wore expressions like they'd been financially blindsided. After the meeting, Linda cornered me in the parking lot, where the sharp scent of cooling asphalt blended with her thinly veiled urgency. "Mr. Torres, all of this could go away if you'd just be reasonable about the truck issue." I pulled out my phone and started recording. Define reasonable. Her eyes gleamed in the streetlight, sharp and dangerous, like shattered glass. "A small relocation allowance to offset administrative expenses. Say, $50,000. The number landed like a gut punch. There it was, blackmail, caught on record. Linda had just served up enough evidence to bury herself deeper than a septic tank footing. The neighborhood was splintering faster than a cracked foundation during a quake. Working class families began holding secret strategy sessions in Jake Patterson's garage. Meanwhile, Linda's loyalists formed a neighborhood standards group. Mrs. Morgan later confided that Linda had visited her, subtly suggesting she might be better off in a senior living facility with proper care services. Then, 3 more households got foreclosure notices based on dubious infractions. Jake was cited because his kids left bikes in his own garage. Sarah Mills, a schoolteacher, received a warning because her car didn't align with community image standards. But Linda had made a critical error in her pursuit of suburban autocracy. She went after someone who was about to find legal weapons powerful enough to bring down her empire. While she paraded around acting like a miniature dictator, I was uncovering something in the county files that would reduce her authority to rubble. Linda's next move was so brazen, it belonged in a villain hall of fame. She revealed a partnership with Pinnacle Properties, a company infamous for turning modest communities into luxury enclaves for the elite. At an emergency board meeting, the conference room reeked of stale coffee and polished lies as Linda unveiled shiny brochures depicting enhanced neighborhood concepts with upscale condos and high-end perks. She explained how selling off common spaces would generate beautification funds, carefully avoiding any mention that her husband Frank had been consulting for Pinnacle for 6 months, pulling in checks that conveniently mirrored their mortgage bills. I uncovered Frank's side deal through financial documents but decided to let Linda continue digging her own grave. In construction, sometimes the smartest tactic is waiting for the other builder's foundation to fail before pointing it out. Jake, using his journalism background, had been covertly documenting Linda's secret meetings with Pinnacle reps, snapping license plate photos and logging visit times. What we found was a calculated land grab. Distressed homes were being scooped up for pennies, with plans to demolish and redevelop entire sections into housing that no local family could afford. Then, things escalated. Linda launched monthly inspections that felt more like military raids than community oversight. Violations were handed out for grass being slightly too tall, mailbox paint not fitting the aesthetic, and Mrs. Morgan's cherished gnome garden, which apparently offended some vague notion of neighborhood dignity. The sound of Linda's designer heels clicking on pavement became a warning siren. Hide anything that might provoke a citation. My concrete business became her prime target. She threatened lawsuits for chronic noncompliance and claimed she had authority to block my trucks from entering the area. When the Hendersons hired me to redo their driveway, Linda planted herself like a secret agent, snapping photos and timing deliveries with stopwatch precision. She even tried to pressure neighbors into admitting they'd hired me, claiming they were contributing to rule violations. Watching Linda try to intimidate 40-ton cement mixers was like watching someone try to herd elephants with a feather duster. Hopeless and absurd, her over-the-top tactics finally laid bare her true objective. She filed property liens against 5 homes, mine included, citing unpaid fines and dues. Her legal threats warned of foreclosure within 90 days if payments weren't received. These notices arrived looking official and ominous, but their legal foundation was as unstable as an abandoned shack in a windstorm. Essentially, Linda was threatening to take our homes over infractions of questionable legality. As her vendetta intensified, I began playing detective. Attorney Patricia advised requesting the full HOA records under state law. What I received was more explosive than anything found in a demolition zone. Linda had siphoned off HOA funds for her own legal costs, disguising them as administrative consultations for bankruptcy attorneys. Reserve funds, earmarked for neighborhood upkeep, had vanished, conveniently aligned with Linda's personal financial crises. Then came the smoking gun. Emails between Linda and Pinnacle Properties laid it all bare. A plan to optimize the neighborhood's demographics and remove undesirable residents. One email blatantly targeted working-class families and ethnic homeowners who supposedly didn't fit the image of the upgraded community. Reading those messages was like stumbling upon a blueprint for discrimination, complete with a playbook for issuing fines and fast-tracking foreclosures. The prejudice in those emails stank worse than fresh tar. Mrs. Morgan tearfully revealed that Linda had shown up with documents suggesting guardianship proceedings, implying that elderly residents like her should be moved to supervised facilities. Jake, too, had been stalked for infractions. His kids' toys were branded visual blight by Linda. And Sarah Mills, our divorced neighbor and a hard-working teacher, faced endless scrutiny just because she drove a humble Honda instead of the luxury vehicles Linda favored. The rift in our neighborhood widened like a crumbling slab of badly poured concrete in the winter freeze. Linda's faction, wealthy retirees and mansion owners, solidified her community standard squad, while working-class residents began organizing what resembled a resistance movement. Home values tanked amid the chaos, which perfectly suited Linda's strategy of engineering desperate sales to benefit her developer allies. More foreclosure threats followed, drawing attention from local media. Linda soaked up the publicity like a campaign-hungry politician, positioning herself as the protector of property values against the threat of small businesses. She gave interviews on her perfectly trimmed lawn, parked right beside her husband's enormous RV, all while blasting my trucks for supposedly ruining neighborhood appeal. The irony was thicker than uncured concrete and just as obvious. While Linda basked in her temporary fame and dictator fantasies, I was quietly unearthing a document that would end it all. Hidden deep in county records was a legal classification about my property that she'd never thought to check. Something that would flip the script and turn her from predator to prey fast. The revelation came on a rainy Thursday afternoon at the county recorder's office, where the air was heavy with dust and old paperwork. Patricia had suggested we look into the original subdivision plan to bolster our legal case against Linda. What we found wasn't just evidence, it was legal dynamite. Dorothy, the eternally chipper clerk who'd been filing papers since disco's heyday, retrieved the original 1987 subdivision plat. The yellowing documents crackled as she unfolded them across the counter. Then Patricia stopped talking mid-sentence. My property wasn't labeled like the others. Instead of a standard residential designation, it was marked as a master developer lot with attached covenants that made Patricia's jaw drop. "Holy Mike," she muttered, breaking from her usual composed demeanor. "Do you even know what this means?" I peered at the legal jargon on the page. "Not yet. But I'm all ears if it's good." She pointed to a specific section buried in the dense language. "Your lot carries master developer rights from the original build. That means the authority to approve HOA decisions wasn't surrendered, it was retained. And it transfers with ownership." The weight of that discovery hit like a sledgehammer straight to the chest. "You're telling me I can overrule Linda's policies?" Patricia's smile lit up the room like it was plugged into the grid. "Not just overrule," she said. "These covenants give the master developer sweeping power, approval over any new rule, assessments, or board actions. That ordinance Linda pushed about commercial vehicles. Powerless without your signature. Her special assessments. Legally worthless scraps. Her fines. A dictator's delusions with no enforcement behind them. We'd spent 2 hours unearthing this legal treasure while the rain tapped on the windows like it was applauding our find. The original developer had died 5 years earlier. His estate, including my home, carried the rights of the master developer. Apparently, the last owner either overlooked this jackpot or simply didn't care. But everything had legally transferred to me. I'd been holding a legal nuke while Linda was lobbing foam noodles. Patricia laid out the full scope of my authority with the enthusiasm of someone discovering buried treasure. The master developer holds a 51% voting stake in HOA decisions. You can remove board members with 30 days' notice. You can override any policies passed without your approval. And the best part, you're entitled to financial compensation for damages caused by invalid board actions. The coming victory tasted sweeter than concrete dust on a perfect pour. But more than personal vindication, something deeper stirred. Linda had bullied working families, intimidated elderly neighbors like Mrs. Morgan, and systematically discriminated against anyone who didn't meet her version of suburban perfection. Now, I had the legal power to bring down her empire and protect every resident she had tormented. Justice was coming, and in industrial-strength doses. We could end this now, Patricia said, but letting her dig herself in deeper, that's how we do real damage. We'd let her continue on this destructive path while collecting evidence. Then, we'd drop the bomb my developer status at a public meeting. The fallout would be massive. Every rule she forced through, every fine she issued, every threat she made would become evidence of fraud, possibly even criminal charges. I thought about Mrs. Morgan, accused of incompetency. Jake Patterson, harassed for having toys in his yard. Sarah Mills, targeted for her car choices. Linda had been playing chess, thinking she was the queen, never realizing I owned the board, the pieces, and the table. The irony was too perfect, like a laser-level foundation. She'd been trying to kick me out of a neighborhood where I held ultimate authority. As I stepped out of the courthouse into the crisp evening air, I felt like a king surveying his land. Linda had spent months making my life a living hell, completely unaware she was poking a bear armed with legal TNT. She was about to find out she hadn't been hunting prey, she'd been stalking an apex predator. And her season was officially over. The next phase felt like assembling the ultimate demolition crew. Saturday morning, my kitchen became our war room. Coffee brewed while legal documents spread across the table like blueprints for Linda's downfall. The rich scent of dark roast mixed with the air of coming justice as Patricia and I laid out our battle plan. We're not just stopping Linda, Patricia said. We're creating a blueprint to protect the entire neighborhood and ensure this never happens again. Enter Bobby Morgan, Mrs. Morgan's sharp-eyed son and forensic accountant. I showed him Linda's HOA expense reports, and he immediately exploded. Mike, she's treating the HOA like her personal ATM. These consultation fees align with her bankruptcy attorney's billing schedule. His fingers flew over his keyboard like rapid fire, cross-referencing dates with court records. He had a tip for homeowners. HOA boards are legally required to keep detailed financial ledgers and check registers, and you have the right to inspect them for personal charges disguised as business expenses. Jake Patterson converted his spare room into a full-on surveillance hub. Walls were covered with timelines. His desk was stacked with gear that could snap photos from 3 blocks away. Every harassment incident is time-stamped and witnessed, Jake said while adjusting his lens. Her bias is so blatant a blind judge could see it. His printer churned out evidence like a casino hitting jackpot. Sarah Mills joined us as our community educator. With her teaching experience, she began informing neighbors of rights they never even knew they had. Her own harassment story painted Linda as laser-focused on targeting single moms, elderly folks, and blue-collar families. Sarah's insight cut through the legal jargon like a chainsaw through styrofoam. Linda's not just controlling, she's running a discriminatory campaign and using the HOA to do it. She organized backyard gatherings that felt like underground resistance meetings, neighbors sharing horror stories and learning their rights. Patricia outlined our legal attack like a surgeon preparing for a high-stakes operation. We've got the nuclear option with your master developer rights. But traditional legal weapons make our case even stronger. We're suing for breach of fiduciary duty, selective enforcement, financial abuse, and civil rights violations. She showed us similar lawsuits where board members got slapped with 6-figure personal judgments. Her grin while discussing damages reminded me why I always pick top-tier subcontractors. Bobby's digging uncovered $47,000 diverted from reserve funds used for Linda's personal legal expenses disguised as HOA consultations. She'd also been paying her son's landscaping company at inflated rates, all while rejecting real maintenance requests due to budget issues. Worst of all, She had a side deal with Pinnacle Properties taking payments to create disruption. That paved the way for redevelopment. Jake's photos caught her in the act selectively enforcing rules. Her son's industrial equipment parked overnight, while my business trucks were ticketed daily. Her husband's oversized RV, no issues, my work van. Citation magnet. We compiled every double standard, every abuse of power, every discriminatory act Linda had carried out during her self-appointed dictatorship. Sarah's secret meetings continued, now full of detailed stories and documentation. Mrs. Morgan explained how Linda tried to have her declared unfit for planting the wrong flowers. The Hendersons were nearly foreclosed on for hiring my concrete services. Everyone had a story, and everyone was more evidence for our case. Watching the community realize they weren't alone was like watching concrete cure slow at first, then rock solid. Meanwhile, I acted like nothing was happening. I kept working, even as Linda tried to intimidate clients. Each job became another opportunity to gather evidence. Every time she interfered, threatened, or banned people from hiring me, it added more fuel to the legal bonfire. Here's the irony that kept me up at night. Grinning, Linda was building her own gallows with every abuse of power. Our plan was brilliant in its simplicity: let her keep digging, then drop the legal bomb at the most public moment possible. Maximum attendance, media coverage, and total collapse. Linda had no clue she was creating the evidence that would destroy her. The predator had become prey, stepping deeper into her own trap. 2 weeks into our plan, I received a foreclosure notice that looked more serious than a federal indictment. Heavy legal paper, frightening tone. Linda thought she could push me out with financial terrorism. What she didn't know is every document she filed dug her hole even deeper. Then came the sabotage. My trucks were vandalized, sugar in the gas tanks, tires slashed, go away scratched into paint. The stench of vandalism clung to my driveway, and Linda, always nearby, pretending to be shocked as I discovered the damage, setting up alibis while soaking in my frustration. Watching her fake innocence was like watching a kid deny stealing cookies with crumbs all over their face. She upped the ante, launching an online smear campaign, false complaints to the BBB, fake reviews about shoddy work, stolen supplies, and flooded basements. It looked like a coordinated attack designed to kill my business through digital character assassination. While Linda escalated, I stuck to my daily routine. My crew followed my lead, treating her tactics like bad weather. The rumble of concrete mixers every morning drowned out her whispers and clacking heels. Jake's surveillance revealed it all: secret late-night meetings in Linda's backyard where she handed out assignments. Margaret filed noise complaints if my tools started early. Bob snapped photos of neighbors hiring me. Her husband Frank tailed my trucks, hoping for traffic violations. The pettiness was military grade. Things heated up. More families received bogus foreclosure threats. The Patels got cited for hanging laundry. Mr. Rodriguez was fined for parking his 20-year-old work truck because it had a plumbing logo. The violations were so ridiculous, neighbors started collecting them like trading cards. The press caught on when Linda held a press conference announcing her alliance with Pinnacle Properties. She stood beside her husband's oversized RV, violating her own rules, talking about improving the neighborhood. Reporter Amanda Morgan, no relation to Mrs. Morgan, called her out. Her answers sounded like a crooked politician caught red-handed. Then came her nuclear move. Weekly city inspections, claims of anonymous complaints, business license attacks, zoning violations, hazardous materials, every one of them professionally written. All timed to coincide with her foreclosure push. A pressure campaign designed to make me cave, but I held my calm like a man holding a royal flush while everyone else panicked. Linda was burning through goodwill and power like a wildfire through dry brush. I collected every threat, every false report, every misuse of authority. She thought she was playing chess. I was playing four-dimensional legal warfare. Then it hit like a Category 5 storm. 3 days after the news piece aired, a man in a tailored suit showed up at my door. His cologne was aggressive. His briefcase screamed lawyer. He introduced himself, Mr. Torres. I'm Richard Castellanos, attorney for concerned community members. My clients are prepared to offer a generous settlement to end this unfortunate neighborhood situation. The proposal was nothing short of stunning in its boldness. 50 grand in cash to move my business elsewhere and withdraw all complaints I'd filed against Linda with the HOA. Think of this as a gesture of goodwill, Castellanos said smoothly, sliding a cashier's check across my kitchen table, like he was dealing a hand in a card game. My clients are simply interested in restoring peace in the community. The unspoken menace in his tone was thicker than dust from a demo site on a windless afternoon. But if you'd rather keep dealing with legal headaches and business interruptions, that's entirely up to you. I calmly reached for my phone and hit record, watching his polished facade begin to crumble like cheap paint blistering in the summer sun. But Linda wasn't done playing dirty. What started as online review sabotage turned into full-on character attacks involving Child Protective Services. Anonymous tips were made, alleging that families with kids were being endangered by my equipment and supposed hazardous materials. CPS agents actually showed up at Jake Patterson's house, inspecting the premises based on claims that my legitimate business was creating an unsafe environment in the neighborhood. The sound of government agents questioning parents about their children's welfare because of my concrete work sent my blood pressure spiking higher than a boom pump. Then, Linda shifted her tactics again, this time targeting the elderly with bureaucratic intimidation. Poor Mrs. Morgan, the sweet lady who used to bake cookies for the neighborhood kids, suddenly found herself being questioned by Adult Protective Services. The concerned citizens had reported her as possibly mentally unfit, citing overgrown hedges and minor property issues. Watching her bewildered and frightened as she tried to prove her competence to strangers felt like witnessing someone stomp a puppy. It took everything I had not to tear down Linda's operation right then and there. The harassment campaign had evolved into something far more organized, like a coordinated network involving city officials, shady contractors, and tactics you'd expect from organized crime. Linda's husband, Frank, started tailing my crews, snapping photos of license plates and jotting down delivery times like he was conducting some kind of corporate espionage. Meanwhile, her son Danny began undercutting me on local concrete jobs, submitting quotes a full 30% below cost just to poach clients. The whole scheme was so precise and synchronized, it felt like a full-scale military campaign aimed at economically crushing my business. Things hit a boiling point when Linda called an emergency HOA meeting to officially unveil her partnership with Pinnacle Properties. The community center buzzed with tension as residents sat in rows of creaky folding chairs, staring at sleek architectural renderings showing luxury condos replacing our humble homes. Current residents will be given first opportunity to purchase upgraded units, Linda proclaimed, smiling like a slick salesperson, though of course, not everyone will meet the new community criteria. The threat was anything but subtle. Get in line or get priced out. One by one, Linda's inner circle began jumping ship. Margaret Finch resigned quietly from the board after finding out there was a criminal investigation into shady HOA finances. Bob, who owned rental properties in the neighborhood, realized he was also being targeted and flipped sides overnight. Even Linda's most loyal backers began questioning her judgment and obvious self-serving agenda. Hearing her political alliances unravel was music to my ears, sweeter than the rhythmic hum of perfectly timed concrete mixers. But Linda didn't stop there. Her most delusional move came next. At that same meeting, she announced that foreclosure proceedings would continue with or without resident approval. According to her, the HOA's authority overruled individual property rights when it came to community well-being. She genuinely believed her position as HOA president gave her powers akin to government seizure rights. She'd gone from neighborhood nuisance to full-on fantasy dictator, and multiple people were now recording her statements as legal evidence. The final straw came when she physically blocked access to the neighborhood streets. She stood in the road, clipboard in hand, trying to stop my clients' trucks, demanding IDs from concrete drivers and threatening to call the police over supposed trespassing. Watching a 58-year-old former bank manager try to strong-arm union drivers was like watching someone challenge a freight train to a shoving match. Thrilling for onlookers but potentially deadly for the one in the ring. Behind the scenes, my meticulous plan had advanced to its final stages like a demolition job, seconds away from detonation. Patricia had already verified every original developer document with the county. Bobby had concluded a financial audit revealing Linda's embezzlement. And Jake, he compiled video proof so damning it could make a prosecutor cheer. The community was bracing for Linda's public reckoning. Media outlets had been prepped for full-scale coverage, and all legal paperwork was loaded and ready for immediate deployment. Linda had been busy constructing her own gallows, and her day of reckoning was closing in faster than a chunk of fallen concrete. The annual HOA meeting showed up like Judgment Day itself, and the community center wasn't ready for the storm. 89 out of 94 homeowners crammed into a space meant for 50 folding chairs packed tighter than sardines in a bureaucratic tin. The air conditioning battled body heat and tension, while the pungent mix of sweat and heavy-duty floor cleaner stung the nostrils. Local news cameras claimed the back wall, their blinding lights transforming the room into a live broadcast arena. Officer Martinez, stationed near the exit, had been dispatched for crowd control, but you could tell he was expecting chaos. Linda walked in like royalty at her own coronation, heels clicking on linoleum with military exactness. She wore her priciest suit and clutched a thick leather portfolio like it was body armor, exuding a confidence that would have been impressive if it wasn't about to be shattered. Her dwindling entourage, now down to 5 retirees and her visibly uncomfortable husband, gathered at the front like nervous sentinels shielding a crumbling regime. The overhead fluorescents buzzed like furious hornets ready to swarm. "Thank you for joining us for tonight's important session," Linda declared, easing into her seat like she was laying claim to a throne. "We've got significant matters to address: community enhancements and compliance enforcement." Her voice carried with the authority of someone convinced they controlled every life in the room. The crowd murmured like distant thunder before a destructive storm. Sarah Mills rose first, holding a petition with 67 signatures rejecting Linda's harassment crusade. Her teacher's voice sliced through the tension like a scalpel through skin. "Mrs. Hawthorne, this petition demands your immediate resignation. Due to your abuse of power, selective rule enforcement, and discriminatory treatment of working-class residents." Applause erupted like rapid gunfire ricocheting off concrete walls. Next came Jake Patterson, reading from a timeline of misconduct so extensive it sent Linda's complexion shifting like a neon light on the fritz. Violation notices aimed at single mothers. Elderly homeowners threatened with incompetence hearings. Systematic targeting of minority families, Jake announced, while the cameras zoomed in on Linda's unraveling poise. "This is a neighborhood improvement, it's cultural cleansing, dressed up as property management." Linda's composure cracked like stressed concrete. "These are baseless lies, nothing more than troublemakers trying to sabotage board progress," she hissed, abandoning all pretense of professionalism. "Mr. Torres and his followers are wrecking everything we've worked for." She flung an accusatory finger at me like I was solely responsible for the downfall of suburbia. "If this nonsense continues, we'll escalate legally." Then Mrs. Morgan struggled to her feet, her voice trembling but resolute. The room hushed instantly. "You tried to label me incompetent over my garden. You threatened to take my house just because I'm old. And not from here." Tears traced paths down her lined cheeks. "This is America. You can't steal our homes because we're different." The room roared with supportive applause while Linda's shrinking loyalists looked ready to vanish beneath the table. That's when I stood, briefcase in hand, and walked toward the front with the steady pace of someone delivering a final verdict. The crowd's noise melted into dead silence as I opened my case and pulled out the documents that would change everything. "Before Mrs. Hawthorne continues threatening seizures and foreclosures," I announced, my voice ringing through the hall, "she should probably understand something critical about my deed." I placed the master developer covenant onto the projector. A collective gasp followed as the legal wording lit up the screen. "According to county filings and HOA bylaws, my property maintains master developer rights from the original subdivision. That means every amendment, fee, and decision made by this board requires my sign-off." The silence was so intense, you could hear the HVAC humming. Linda turned ghostly pale. "Those papers are fake," she whispered, her voice as fragile as cracking ice. "This is manipulation." But Patricia was already walking forward, holding authenticated records and legal statements that would hold up in any courtroom. "Mrs. Hawthorne," I said, savoring every second of her breakdown, "as the master developer, I hereby invalidate all your ordinances, nullify every fine, and render your foreclosure threats legally meaningless." The room exploded in cheers, the sound rivaling a demolition blast. But I wasn't done dismantling her empire. "Additionally, I'm calling for immediate removal of the board on grounds of financial misconduct, abuse of authority, and civil rights violations." Patricia handed me Bobby's report showing $47,000 misappropriated. "Using HOA funds for personal expenses is criminal fraud. Law enforcement will investigate accordingly." As Linda tried to flee, Officer Martinez stepped forward. "Mom, please stay seated. Detective Williams would like a word regarding these financial discrepancies." The crowd stared, silent, as Linda's grip on power disintegrated faster than a condemned building hitting the ground. Her influence evaporated like dew under a rising legal sun. Within a day, Linda was hit with charges of embezzlement, extortion attempts, and public trust abuse. Her mugshot hit the local news under the headline, "HOA Despot Busted for Fraud." Her expression, like someone who just realized they'd brought napkins to a poker game with a card shark. The DA's office, sniffing corruption like bloodhounds, tacked on charges for conspiracy and civil rights violations thanks to Jake's mountain of footage. Our community changed faster than quick-drying cement. That same night, an emergency election took place. Sarah Mills won unanimously, joined by a diverse board of working-class homeowners who believed in unity over exclusion. Their first act, reimbursing every cent Linda had wrongfully taken, $23,000 returned to residents who'd been financially terrorized. Mrs. Morgan cried tears of joy as she accepted her refund, immediately spending it on the garden Linda once tried to erase. It now bloomed with every flower color Linda had banned. Our financial recovery outpaced even the most ambitious building plans. Faced with Bobby's airtight audit, the HOA's insurance company settled fast, covering all legal costs and compensating victims. Frozen assets from Linda's accounts would fund restoration for years. The shady Pinnacle Properties deal, it imploded the moment investors caught wind of Linda's fraud. My concrete business skyrocketed, thanks to grateful neighbors and regional clients inspired by our story. The sound of mixer trucks now echoed as an anthem of resilience, not oppression. 3 families nearly driven out by foreclosure hired me for major upgrades, turning victims into champions. The irony was thicker than top-grade concrete. Along the way, unexpected friendships brought healing to the heart of our neighborhood. Jake and I bonded over construction and photography, partnering on projects that stitch families closer. Sarah launched monthly potlucks where delicious meals replaced bitterness and fear. Even Margaret Finch publicly apologized and joined. The rebuilding effort, proving redemption is possible for anyone except the irredeemably corrupt. Our proudest milestone was the launch of the Neighborhood Heroes Scholarship. Funded by recovered money and donations, it honored Mrs. Morgan's courage, Jake's tenacity, and Sarah's leadership supporting local students pursuing trades. The inaugural award went to a brilliant young Latina studying concrete science. Presenting it felt like pouring a flawless foundation for the future. The annual Unity Festival became our living celebration of diversity conquering prejudice. Food trucks lined streets Linda once ruled with measuring tape, while children played freely where she'd banned joy. The smell of world cuisines and sound of laughter replaced memories of designer heels and whispered threats. Regional media turned our triumph into a blueprint for others fighting oppressive HOAs. Linda's legal troubles snowballed. Federal prosecutors filed civil rights charges. Her law license was suspended, and lawsuits ensured her financial ruin would last decades. Fittingly, the house she once used as a weapon of control was repossessed by the very justice system she tried to manipulate. 18 months later, I sipped my coffee on the driveway, watching kids play where fear used to reign. My work trucks gleam like trophies of grit. Mrs. Morgan waves from her vibrant, defiant garden. The air smells of mulch and fresh brews, not perfume and tyranny. Our neighborhood, it's everything Linda tried to suppress. Here's the takeaway. Ordinary people can crush extraordinary bullies when they unite and fight smart. Survived your own HOA nightmare? Tell us in the comments your experience. Might be the next story we spotlight. And if this tale of justice and suburban revenge fired you up, hit that subscribe button. This is just the beginning. Thanks for spending your time.